Hello and welcome back. So last time we were talking about kind of a new battlefield. The Civil War had been won, but now the governments within the United States are having this own ethical and legal battle about what rights to enshrine and what rights to give out. And then some people are trying to figure out if they can cancel those rights. So you have people in the South passing these black codes, which are limiting African American rights, essentially trying to make them slaves in everything but name. And then you have Congress passing the Civil Rights Act of 1866. Congress had also established something called the Freedmen's Bureau. Now, the Freedmen's Bureau was an agency established by Congress and President Lincoln when he was still alive to basically ease these newly freed people into society, establishing schools and essentially job placement and things like that to basically try to make these people who now have control of their lives, kind of give them some direction, as it were. However, these laws kind of conflict with the 1857 Dred Scott decision. Remember, Dred Scott stated that, excuse me, the Dred Scott decision was a Supreme Court decision that essentially stated that black people within the United States were property and therefore had no legal rights, couldn't sue the government or protest ill treatment. They were pretty much at the mercy of white people, specifically white men. So they were running into some problems with the Democrats who were still in Congress, and they were running into problems with the president himself. See, President Andrew Johnson, he vetoed the Civil Rights Act and the Freedmen's Bureau's extended powers. Why? Because he felt that the government was overstepping its authority. We're back to that issue of government overstepping its authority. Hey, Atlas. So, but now here is another truly historical moment in American history, because the Congress was essentially more than 2/3 controlled by Republicans. Why? Well, because 11 states, actually, sorry, 10, because Tennessee was incorporated. 10 states were not in the Union. So therefore, tons of representatives and senators were not in Congress, which is another reason why Johnson disapproved of these new laws. He felt that they were not truly representative of the people's will because some people were not included. So he vetoed those bills, but because the Republicans that were currently in Congress had over 2/3 of the votes, they overrode the president's veto. So Congress passes a law, it goes to the president's desk, the president vetoes or passes. If he vetoes, that law goes back to Congress, and Congress has the opportunity to overturn the president's veto and pass the law. That almost never happens because there's rarely that much agreement in Congress. But this time, there was almost total agreement in Congress. They overrode the president's veto, and they passed those laws. And then, while they had that power, while these radical Republicans had that power, they then just doubled down and went for the 14th Amendment because they were afraid that the Civil Rights Act would get overturned by the Supreme Court or they would get overturned by a future Congress. So they wanted to enshrine, to protect those rights in a constitutional amendment because they had so much power, they could do it. So they wrote and passed the 14th Amendment and then sent it off to the states.